one of the options. Okay. Okay. Graduating to YouTube. Yeah, so the link has changed. Now sending it to all the places. And let's give attendees some time to reconnect to right link. Let's start in 5 minutes, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I see more people connecting. That's good. We've set up the live stream and announced for all the participants. So let's start. I'm really happy that you all joined, and I hope there will be more joiners along the way of today's event. Let me quickly go through the agenda. We'll have 2 presentations today. We'll start with a story of migrating to Svelte by Vace. And the second will be talk about the preprocessors by Sean. And in the end of the event, we'll have a giveaway for JS Nation live event, which will happen in less than a week. Besides that, we have a Discord channel, and That's why the comments in a YouTube video are disabled. So please use a Discord channel to share your thoughts and ask questions from the participants. Please start. I think it's time to start. Vace, can you take the floor and switch to your slides?
Yes. You see my slide now? Just to be sure.
Not sure.
Wait a minute.
I stopped my sharing. Now you should be able to share yours.
Okay.
Yeah,
I hope you are
visible.
Okay, welcome everybody. I will be talking about our migration to Svelte Sapper. So first of all, my name is Vace Kupecioglu. You can find me in GitHub with the name Mirvaris, and I'm working at a company called Company Info. That's the name of the company. So for you to understand why we choose Svelte, I need to talk about what we do in Company Info and especially in our team. Basically, Company Info is a company that collects information about organizations, the management, and real estate, and then enriches those data and serves those data as a platform. So our customers are basically compliance officers, risk management officers, and sales representatives. So mostly office users. So what was the challenge here? So I joined Company Info 1.5 years ago. So there's this main product that we serve this data to customer, and we want to renew the front-end part. The thing is, the front-end part was written by jQuery with some custom PX. PX is push states Ajax. Maybe you heard of it. Basically, how it works, jQuery, whenever you post, jQuery creates a post request, reads the HTML, extracts some part of the HTML, and then replace it in the page. Usually in PX, you also see that URL is changed, but that was not the case in our project. So the team is mostly consists of backend developers. When I joined, there was only one front-end developers, and we are now 2. So that also makes a criteria in decision. And the most important of it, there was previous failed attempts. So there was lots of people coming and going in the front end, and they tried something in React in another project, but it took longer than it should have. So people didn't trust new frameworks. So that's why we wanted, first of all, low learning curve, because we want to easily invite people to start coding the front end. Not only the 2 of us front end developers, but whenever a backend developer needs to code, it should be easy for them to join and do it. So yeah, it's also ease of development. That's the important part. As I said, because of the number of, let's say, full stack developers, the framework that we choose should be familiar to all kinds of developers, not only for front-end developers. It should be simple because, as I said, we are two front-end developers, and we have lots of responsibility. We need to migrate, but also we need to do the configuration, even, for example, Docker container configuration. So we don't want to lose too much time on the details of the framework. And of course, it should be fast, at least as fast as it is currently now. So what we did, we considered a couple of frameworks, React, Vue, Angular, Svelte, and Solid HTML. First of all, we wanted easy server-side rendering. By easy, I mean something that Sapper provides, or let's say Next.js provides. So it's out of the box server-side rendering. So from start, and Solid and HTML was out of question for now. But the thing is, Solid was an interesting project. It was too new, of course, even if there was a easy server-side solution. So it was, well, we didn't look for a totally mature framework, but at least it shouldn't be too new, no? But it's like Svelte, it's compiled framework, but the syntax is React. And previously I worked with Angular, and for this team, I found it too complex. And when it comes to Vue and React, we already have a project in React and we already have the know-how. So we couldn't justify to switching to Vue. And then the short list was React and Svelte. And because of, I think Svelte is much more inviting as a framework, we decided to go with Svelte. So yeah, we choose Svelte. I mean, obviously, otherwise, why would I be here? So how we choose to migrate? Big bang, definitely no. I mean, we wanted to incrementally migrate our project. So here's a network architecture, basically. So we have a proxy server in front. We have the old framework. We have the new API. Basically, they are close to each other because currently they are on the same server and they use the same services. And we have Sapper, which talks to the new API, but also a client can also directly talk to the new API also. So then we decide, so how we will do it. I mean, we should migrate parts of the pages, isn't it? I mean, then the whole pages, etc. So how should we migrate part of the pages? Then we look, can we use web component? The thing is, we couldn't. First of all, because our customers was Office users, we have lots of Internet Explorer 11 users, and we have some problems with using Svelte component that marked with web component to use in normal Svelte pages. Frankly speaking, I don't remember exactly the other problems because when we saw that we can easily use Svelte components directly in any page, then we said, just drop the web components. Why even bother? This will be like a temporary solution. So we can use Svelte components in JavaScript. How do you do it? You export your components, first of all, in a way, I will come to it, and you import. For example, we have a real estate search component, and then just say it's a class, and you say new real estate search. Then you give a target DOM element to where it should be initialized. And then you just set its properties. For example, query is location, I mean, Q parameters in the URL, for example. The nice thing is stores also works really great. Stores in Svelte are just JavaScript objects. They don't require any runtime. So if your components uses stores, you can also export those stores and set their values, and everything will be rendered as you expect. And also we created a new rollup to export all those components. We collected all those components we wanted to export in lib.js. And this is some configuration if you want. Basically, this allows you to access those components as a global variable, because in our case, we didn't use ECMAScript 6 imports. So this was easier. And the rest is just the normal rollup configuration for Svelte. The thing is, we noticed that, okay, this is good that we can migrate component by component, but the thing is, our continuous integration or continuous deployment, let's say, isn't there yet. So we deploy in every sprint, and we noticed that a full sprint is always more than enough for most of the pages to migrate. So we said that for now, we start with smaller pages and we will go page by page. And whenever we hit a big one, which we have, then we will implement those component by component solution. And this simplifies it a lot, basically. So components. First of all, it's really easy to wrap existing ones. When you start this kind of migration projects, you want to defer as much thing as possible because you need to decide lots of things. So I really like that it was easy to wrap existing jQuery components quickly in Svelte and just use them as it is, so that later on we can bit by bit change our own implementation. And I think it's also easy to bake your own components. Currently, there's these sites in community. Basically, you can search existing ones. One mistake maybe that we did, we created our own, for example, select component, but now there is Svelte select. Maybe we'll switch later on to Svelte select and we will look at the Svelte calendar and just use it. But the thing is, we are now in 9 months in migration and we didn't need yet anything. So component-wise, it was really good. So in the process, we decided that our common components shouldn't have margins. Why I'm speaking about this is because you will see that we hit a limitation for us at least. Why we don't want margins? Because when your common components doesn't have margin, it makes them much easier to compose in other components. So we decided that that's the parent component that decides the layout of child components. So we created, when we do this, of course, you create some layout components also, like flags or row with spread. And then quickly, you want some functionality like this. I mean, I want a flex thing, but I want a gap between them. So normally, if you use CSS grids, you have gap property, but in Flex, you don't. But it's normally a simple CSS, isn't it? Let's see how it is written. So this is let's say this is a row component in Svelte. I create a div, I put slots because we wanted to put the child elements here. And this, oh, sorry. And okay, and this is the CSS basically. I mean, display flex, direction row, everything on the row should have margin 20 pixel. I see that I made a mistake here. It should be directly under direct children, and the last children should have 0. Of course, you can, if you write it in Svelte, it won't work. You need to put global around those stars because CSS is scoped. It only targets whatever there is in this HTML template. So we wanted that 20 pixel to be a variable. So, but you can't give a variable in here. So how you do it in Svelte is you create a property for that component, let's say gap, and then you give an inline style and you define a CSS variable here, and then use that CSS variable and you are good to go. And now you have configurable CSS properties. It's great and it works. It's just that we have lots of Internet Explorer 11 users and we can't use that. So we went for fixed gaps like 5, 10, 20 and created, we are using SCSS preprocessors and we just create those classes on the fly for different gap variables. If you are curious, there is an article that Rikeris wrote about using CSS in JS, specifically emotion. We didn't want to go that way because we want to use just out of the box CSS solution, and frankly speaking, I couldn't make it run in Sapper. So another example that I want to share is this. I saw a code that really changed my way to look at Svelte. First of all, maybe you already see some this kind of CSS, Z-index 999. It's usually a race to the top. Some components tries to be on top of the other and on top of the other, etc. So people just increment those numbers. But there is this easy solution for it. It's normally you use 2 elements directly in body, one div one div that you put that all your components goes here, and another with z-index 1 and some other CSS, and all the things that should be on top of the others should go in the second div. So this is great, but the thing is your component tree is under this one, the first up part. But how do you create DOM in the second part? So in React, you can use Portal for this. I remember I tried to do this in Angular 5 and got lost in their source code, and even remembering it just creates a physical pain. And here you go with Svelte. So let's create a simple popover component. See, this is just a simple one script. There's of course some styles, class popover, and slot. So now we added a couple of more things. What we added is, first of all, we get onMount function from the Svelte, which is called whenever the DOM is mounted, well, the object is mounted to the DOM itself. And we have this nice syntax in Svelte saying bind this to this variable. So after the DOM is mounted, we can access the DOM object from this variable. And how we put it on the pop section is as simple as this. You get the pops and append child this root element. And at first I was like, what? I mean, should this even work? And then I realized that all the magic in Svelte is basically happening on compile time. And on runtime, you are mostly with DOM elements and JavaScript. So this really makes me feel easy. I mean, I work with Ember, Angular, React, and all of those forces you to think in a way, in a different way. I mean, you need to think in a React way, you need to think in an Angular way, etc. But now after this, I felt like Svelte is just says like, I will not be in your in front of you. I mean, this is just a tool. Just do whatever you want, and this really felt good. So yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like this. Like I'm using a nice tool since I use like, I don't know, a jQuery maybe. So of course you need to, do some positioning on that element, but that's not a topic here. So in a project like this, tests are really important. So because this project takes a long time, and whenever you migrate things, you change a lot, the common components part, and with every change, you may break the previous migrated pages, basically. So we need a really good testing there. And the nice thing is Sapper comes with Cypress. I didn't know Cypress before Sapper, but I really glad that it introduced me to Cypress, and I really love it. I mean, even this project fails, I hope it not, but I know that later on I will use Cypress. So what is Cypress? Cypress is like, if you don't know what it is, it's like Selenium. It basically drives a browser to run your tests, and just a browser runner. I used previously Selenium, some tools from HP and IBM, and just a bit of Cucumber. And Cypress goes like this. You say, Cypress, please give me the input with the name username, and I want to type there Vace, which is my name. I know it's hard to remember. And how it works is just that usually it's just like jQuery. Actually, it uses jQuery, and but you see, it looks like procedural code, but actually it's only a configuration of a test. So what it does, it tries to get this element. It retries until it gets it. Of course, it has some timeout duration, but you can configure it. And when it finds, it types the name here. And if you go a bit more on details, it looks like this. This is just, if you did any testing, this should be familiar. Describe, and int. So for all users, when users type his or her name, a text saying hello should appear next to the name. So get input name, username, type Vace, and then go to the greetings and say, check that greetings contains hello Vace. So it's a basic one. But the problem starts at some point. It's just that you get very long selectors. And now, you see, you are now doing a integration test, basically. So it's a high-level test of the page. And now you are looking to implementation details. Basically, long selectors are just a combination of implementation details of different components that your test shouldn't know. So how we fix this problem is just we introduce locator files. It's just a name. So if you have an organization page, which is, by page, I mean routable Svelte component, which is under the routes, we create organization.locator.js. And this locator.js is as simple as this one. Look, just create a couple of variables. The page title is at h1. Submit button is input type submit. Okay. And city select option is, okay, this is a bit of a long selector. And now your page locator should know the implementation details of your select component. So what we not only put locator files for every page, but we also put locator files for components also. And those variables shouldn't be just only a string, but we can also say we can create functions for them. I will come to this a bit later on. Why we use a function here? It's just that in page we define select, if you want, with a city cell, which say this is a city selection, but this is only to mark it as a unique target in the test. So when we use, so then we can use what we used here to get the real selectors. So organization locator becomes city select option becomes selection options from city cell. That's all. And now test becomes site contains city cell option Amsterdam click, and then site get submit button click. And this is much easier to write. So how about API? The thing is, we also did the same for APIs. We put the APIs in locator. So this means this page uses these APIs. And this is a bit complex, but let me show you how we use it. So we import the locator on top, and then before each we say reset APIs and then stop API, and use API user profile and just give a user profile authenticated user for as a fixture. If you use Cypress, you will notice that this isn't a Cypress command, stub API and reset API. Cypress provides some sci.server and sci.route for you to intercept the calls and for you to test easily. But the thing is, we don't use it. Why? So for test or development, we created something like this. We created a dev proxy. We still have the Sapper, and we created a stub API server. We didn't want to use the Cypress server and Cypress test because, first of all, Sapper doesn't have an option to start without server-side rendering. So all your preload functions will get error. And the thing is, we also wanted the server side of our pages, and not only the client running code. So how this stub API server works? It's just one simple JavaScript file, like 100 lines of code that I quickly created. Basically, it has a stub API path. If you post something to it, like method get and pet this one, and with fx this one, basically it says that whenever you receive a request, a get request to this pet, just return this file. So basically you configure what the backend server should return. And you can put some delays for if you want to see your loading actions. You can even return return a JSON with error and with status code this and with headers, etc. So, and one more thing, it also supports a path called stats, and this stats returns the statistics of what is called. So basically, for every path registration, it returns all the call with URL and payload. So for example, I registered a call with /API search, and it's called with URL and no payload, of course. So how we use this? The thing is, as I said, Cypress allows you to create custom commands, and we create lots of custom commands, and one of it is this backend. I will just go over it very quickly. Basically, it says go to the stats, get the stats with the path. And now this is the interesting part. It creates a spy, which is Cypress uses Sinon spies. It creates a spy, and for each call that is in the stat, it calls the function with URL and payload. How we use this is like this, basically. We do the search. We said that result cell contains something, and then Sci backend API should be called once. So your backend call can be tested like you test any spy, or just Sci.backend API. So organization search should be called with match query parameters, or you can even do this for payloads. So integration test, okay, but what about the components? Do we do component testing? Well, no, not now, at least. But the thing is, we use Storybook. Let me show you our Storybook. Storybook is basically a place that you configure, you write some stories about components and in different states, and you see them as stories. So we have this table, for example, we have this table in different states. You can click them, you can play with them. And the nice thing, you can play with the variables here, or properties, let's say. And also you have a nice documentation here. We didn't implement it yet, but in the coming weeks, we will also implement visual regression testing for components. Now that we have Storybook in place, we can easily do this. I have very few time, but just quickly go over the last slides. How do you do the stories in Svelte? This is from the Storybook page. It says component my button, and you give some properties. If you have some child components, you can define it in story. So you need to create another Svelte component. It says view, and then you use it like this. But the thing is, this is also not enough. The thing is, our components uses Sapper stores, the stores that Sapper provides. For it, what we do, oops, we get this context key from the Sapper internal, unfortunately, and set the context so that components can reach to page and preloading stores that Sapper provides. Basically, we are stubbing them, and then we create some other stores, and then this is a syntax that you can use to create dynamic components. Basically, you say there will be a Svelte component, use this as component, and put all the properties here, and just just on click of this is the on click of this component as whole. So we hit some bumps on the road also, but I don't have too much time to do it. Maybe another time I can explain what we had, in which places we had some difficulties. Okay. So questions. Let me see. Sorry. So I start from the end. I work with Angular for many years and big and small companies. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, one of the criteria that actually my CTO asked me, this is not as known as React or Angular. Do you really believe that it will be here in next 5 years? So what we do is from periodically, like every 6 months, we evaluate our decision. Did we really did good? I mean, are we still going with this, or if we want to switch back to React, can we quickly do it? But yeah, I really think that compilers makes things easy, and in the end, it removes the runtime, and so that you can play with like your old tools like DOM and JavaScript. So I think I don't see any question. So Michael, it's on you.
Yeah, Vace, thanks for your presentation. I think it was really great overview of your path, starting with what you wanted to, what tools you guys were using, and also to, especially intriguing were the limitations part. And I hope you'll share the slides with us shortly, and everybody can, assess is that the tooling that they would like to use. So I think that's very common for our engineering tasks, that are always pros and cons, and we are the ones to decide and to take the lead and sell it to business, and then to support and master the tooling. And the tooling is also grows and improves. I'll take just a minute to do a bit of promotion of the community we are doing it together with. It's called Svelte Society, in case you haven't heard of it, which would be really strange if, especially if you're watching it on YouTube and you are active on Twitter. So please have a look at this account on GitHub, Twitter, and YouTube. There's plenty of content already, and we're working to bring more for the people who just starting with Svelte, who want to master their knowledge, who want to share their experiences and all kinds of information around Svelte, Sapper, and modern frontend as well. Then we will be switching to a second talk. The second speaker is Sean, active member of a community, famous for his React passion, and also he's doing a lot of stuff on Svelte as well. I'm really intrigued to see how I can work with preprocessors in my future projects on Svelte. So Sean, if you can take it over.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Let me, you have to stop screen sharing. Okay. And then I have to screen share. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. So thanks for having me. And yes, I am very active in React and Svelte. And I think I have a little bit of identity crisis right now, basically because React is so popular, but Svelte is so good. So I kind of jumped between both. In fact, just before this, I was at the Reactive Flux Discord channel doing a Q&A. But here we're here to talk about Svelte. And the reason I'm interested in this is because people are very interested in the intermixing of TypeScript and Svelte. And I think people don't really understand that it already is mostly possible. And actually the tooling is getting better every day. I've been helping out, but we definitely need more help. We don't need more complainers. We need more people helping. So I want to also show you something that is core to how this works, but then also that you can use for basically, just doing any other sort of non-standard Svelte usage. Svelte is very much based on the HTML model. Every single component is valid HTML, right? Svelte wants to be a superset of HTML. It actually is not exactly, but it's close enough that it's a superset because this looks like HTML and it just executes. It's just that the script and style tags are scoped to this component, right? But what if we wanted to write something else that is not standard HTML, right? So for example, what if I want to write SCSS inside of my style tag, right? How do I make that work? How do I pass it through? And basically, Svelte has no knowledge of what post-CSS or SCSS or whatever. If I want to write TypeScript in my script tag, how do I make that happen, right? And again, Svelte is written in TypeScript, but it doesn't by default let you write TypeScript. The easiest way for me to demonstrate this is actually to show you how to do preprocessing on the third part of this, which is basically the template. So any Svelte component has three parts. It has a script tag, it has a style tag, and then it has the template, right? Which can be any number of tags. But basically, let's say if we want to write pug is this white space HTML authoring method. So for example, if I have this basic site here, this is what I write and this is what it compiles to. So it's very concise and it's very easy to move things around and without worrying about closing tags because white space is used to indicate closing, right? So for example, if I wanted to type list, I can just type UL here and then I have a list. And I can just type li and indent like that, and then I can just copy and paste all these, and all the closing tags are done for me. So let's just say, for the purposes of this demo or this walkthrough, this is what we want to do. We want to implement a pug preprocessor, right? But really, what I'm trying to show you applies for post CSS, TypeScript, whatever the hell you want, right? If you want to write dev tools that observe the Svelte process, but then don't actually modify the Svelte output, that is also fine. So I just want to give you an idea of the easiest way that you can hook into the Svelte compiler, because that's the easiest way you start to understand how Svelte works as a compiler, right? Like that's something that we're all here, we're all interested in. So I think the main way to talk about this is basically we're going to go into the reference and understand how Pug works, and then I'll basically just live code for you, and you can see how this works. So basically, it's a very simple API. It says pug.render and then some string, right? So let's actually do that. So over here, I have a blank folder, and I can just npm install Pug, right? And then I can set up like some base text file like raw.svelte, out. Okay. And then I'll just say h1 hello world over here. Okay, so this is supposed to be the input file. So let's actually create an index.js, and then we'll run that, and then we'll say const pug equals require pug, right? And then we'll just say we'll also need to read from the file system, so we'll say something like fs dot read file sync raw dot svelte. That's the raw. That's the raw file. So let's actually check that this works. Node index.js, and I think I have to type in like UTF-8. Basically, just to convert it to a string. Okay, so it reads from the file, right? It reads h1 hello world. Now I have to run it through Pug, right? So I can just say something like const post equals to pug.render raw, and I can log this out. So now when I run this, it gives me the h1 hello world, right? That's so it's basically running that pre-processing step. So let's say I want this to be a Svelte file to be run through Svelte though. So how do I actually do that, right? Basically, again coming back to this, I want to be able to say h1 hello world like that, and it just works together with all of this stuff. So let's actually install. Well, okay. So now we have this raw post-processed HTML. We can actually, this is actually valid Svelte, so we can actually run it through Svelte. So let's install Svelte. npm install Svelte, and I'm gonna require it over here, Svelte, and I can say something like Svelte dot const like JS or whatever results equals to svelte.compile. And let's look at the API reference. So svelte.compile, svelte.compile. You basically just pass in the source, and then you have some options, right? So we can just do this. So post, and then I can log out the results. The results is an object of JS, CSS, AST warnings, whatever. Let's just log out the JS. Okay. So now we can see this. Oops, sorry. Woo, Svelte compile is not a function. Why is that? Svelte / compiler. Okay, good. So we have all this code. In fact, we can probably write it. So let's just say fs.write file sync results path out.js results. Okay. Results.js.code. Okay. And then we can even do a source map, right? js.map out.map.js.map, something like that. So let's run this again. And now we'll have the input JS. So we have the raw Svelte, which is transformed into HTML, and then the HTML is transformed into Svelte like this. So this is very cool, right? It creates the H1 element, and then it adds the text content exactly like you would in the REPL, right? So let's just say, let's put this all back and put this hello world, delete that. This is the exact JS output that you get in the Svelte repo over here. So I'm trying to get you to understand that this is how Svelte works under the hood. This is how the Svelte compiler thinks about this. Okay, so but sometimes we actually need to hook into the Svelte. Right now we're not hooking into Svelte. We're doing our preprocessing. We're doing our render first. We're doing a conversion first from the raw Svelte, and then we're compiling only the post output. So basically, what I want to do is get rid of this and use the preprocessing API, so it hooks into it. Okay, let me talk about the reason why you might want to do it. So let's say I have this hello world, but then I also have the this stuff, right? So let's just scope down and call this the style tag, and then let's just do that, right? So if I do this, then this would not be, I don't know, would this be valid? This would actually cause an error because you know, I'll be trying to process something that isn't actually pug, right? This is not pug. This is valid HTML, but it's not pug. So basically, we need the Svelte process to actually consume all these files. Like let's say we have a script tag, let's say we have a style tag, let's say we have a template tag. We need Svelte to run on all this and recognize, for example, that H1 is used, this H1 tag is used here. Like we need all Svelte's like accessibility guarantees and type checking and all that to do that. So basically, we want to run it inside of Svelte. Actually, let's see if I can. I'll leave the style tag in here. Okay, so so now we want to run this inside of Svelte. So we'll just pass the raw into Svelte to compile, and this will give us the wrong output, right? So let's actually try to run it here, and this will give us an output that looks like this, where basically it just treats H1 hello world as the text. Like that's not really what we want. So we need to, but it does do the CSS right? So let's actually output the CSS. It actually gives us the right CSS. CSS. Actually, I'm not sure because it might actually give an error. Yeah, it might. So Svelte compiles out any unused CSS, right? So here we have this H1 is supposed to match this H1 tag, but it's not because it's regarded as unused, right? Svelte doesn't know about this pug thing, so it's regarded as unused, and we got to go fix that. So we'll eventually fix it, but basically we need to enable the compiler, the preprocess step. So let's actually do the preprocess step, and I think the best way to do it is to look at the API for this. And basically, it's the same thing. You do svelte.preprocess. It's an async function now, and then you pass in a number of preprocessors, right? So let's try and do this. So we're gonna do. Okay, so we unfortunately have to do this, which is kind of annoying, because we don't have top level await. Await. Results equals, actually, maybe I just let results, and then I'll put the raw file in here, and then here is where we start to get interesting, right? So this preprocessor is an array. Actually, I'm not. Oh, right. Okay, it's an array. So what am I doing? Okay, yeah. So it's either an array of preprocessors or it's just a single preprocessor. So now we're just gonna go for a single preprocessor, and now we're gonna try and modify the markup, and this is what we'll have to do, right? Like let's actually see what the I guess what options we have available, and here we have content and file name. So let's just get content and file name, where I'm destructuring. I'm using the ES6 destructuring, and I can just return content and file name. Actually, I'm just going to ignore file name because we don't really need that. But if you want to write like advanced functionality, you might be able to use file name. So let's actually log out what we get as content. Okay. So if I did it right, I have some sort of error. Identifier results has already been, okay. No big deal. Right, so when I log this content out, it actually is the full content of the raw input, right? Which is what I don't really want, because you know, I like my pug function can't really handle this. I need to split out the style tag and the script tag from the raw template tags, right? So that's where you start to really understand, like, there's a little bit of like, this is meant to give you the full control, but actually Svelte could have done the stripping out for me. Like, Svelte actually does do it behind the scenes. But if you look at the raw the docs, where is it? If you look at the docs, the markup function says the markup function receives the entire component source text along with the file name. So this is meant to give you extreme capability of like writing any arbitrary code that you want that analyzes the whole thing and makes whatever modifications that you need. But for us, we actually just need to drop everything, right? So the way to do this, the way that I figured out how to do this was basically to go inside of the Svelte source code. So if you haven't been to the Svelte source code, this is something I want to encourage you to do, because it really helps you understand that it is very approachable and you can approach it, right? So Svelte, like, don't be intimidated of diving into the source code of your frameworks, because that's how you really know it super well, and you can contribute, you can use it to your full advantage, and you can also know the limitations of the framework. So here inside of the source code, Svelte basically has two parts, and this is exactly the two parts that you can see inside the source code. There's a compiler and there's a runtime. So I've done some other talks about the runtime. You can look at the prior talks on this Svelte Society YouTube channel, but today we're actually going to go into the compiler. And then we're actually going to look for like the parsing code, right? So I think it's here. I could be wrong though. And blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of like parsing code, but we actually need one of the regexes. So I'm gonna cheat and go look for my notes here. There we go. Compiler / preprocess / index.ts. Okay. There we go. So inside of the source code has the regex that we're going to use. Isn't that amazing? We can just like cheat by copying from that. So here you see how this preprocess function internally already does the replacement of the script tag, right? This is the script tag, and then this is the style tag, right? And then for the markup tag, it doesn't do anything. It just calls the function that we give it, right? We give it the function, and then it just, you know, and then it just calls with the full source. So what we really need to do is we need to copy and paste all these regexes internally and just match and replace it. So I'm going to cheat and also just copy that because you don't need, I mean, you understand how to do this. And I'm going to paste that inside of my source code. So I'm going to paste that here and say, so this is the style regex for identifying the styles in the script regex. And basically I can just say something like content.replace style regex with nothing, and then content.replace script regex with nothing. Some people say regex, some people say regex. I don't know. Okay, you see, so that previously there was a style tag there, and the style tag is gone now. And now this is a valid pug file, right? So I can do something with this as a pug file. So now I can just say something like post equals, actually I'll just say like let post, and then post equals to post pug.render post, and I'll give back the post, something like that. This is not the return signature. So before I do that, let's actually check the return signature of this function. We actually need to give an object of either code and dependencies. So the dependencies are basically saying, like, if this file that I'm pre-processing depends on other files that you might need to hot reload, especially when you're doing development, then you should name those dependencies that you're also tracking. But for us, we're only pre-processing a single file, so we actually don't need to do that. So we just need to give it a code. All right, so an object with a key of code that I would just give it the post-process thing. In fact, I would just call this, I don't know, code. whatever, and then we can just use ES6 shorthand to do that. Okay, so what do we get out of all this? Let me run this again. So instead of the invalid, so we started off with this pug syntax and then the style tag. So instead of the invalid, like just raw text, this is what we got, which is the wrong. Hang on, I think I haven't done. Oh, yeah, right. Okay. 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 So I didn't finish one step. So result.code. Okay, result.code. Something like that. Let me run this again. Forgot a step. Whoa. Code is undefined. Why is code undefined? Let me actually just like move this whole thing inside so I don't have any race conditions or anything, because I am not awake enough to figure this out. Yeah, good. So let's see what we have here. So instead of, so previously this was and this was bad, right? Like Svelte just thought this was normal text, but because we've run the preprocessor with through Pug, now Svelte thinks this is the parses it correctly for H1 and a hello world inside of it. And not only that, because it recognized the H1, then the CSS part of Svelte understands that this CSS is being used. Therefore, it also outputs the correct CSS. Hang on. Okay. Did I do it wrong? Let me try running this again because I want to show you the right CSS. Results.css. What is the output of Svelte.compile? Anyway, like, you know, I hope you're getting a css.code. Okay. Please work. It's no. Okay, I don't know why it's no. I have to figure that out. Okay. It looks like a bug. I did not plan that, but whatever. Like let's just kind of try to wrap up, right? So basically, what I've gone through and done for you is basically shown you the whole process of how Svelte is. Runs a preprocessor and then it compiles and then it outputs the code. This is the Svelte compiler process, right? The last thing that you need to do from this is that you have all this JS, you have all this CSS. You need to run your bundler on all of this. Bundle up all the JS, bundle up the CSS, and output it in your final build. And that's how Svelte apps are made. And so this is actually what both like the Svelte loader and rollup plugin Svelte do for you, right? Like you have all these configurations. These are all the options that you give a program like this to run, right? And part of that is this preprocessor thing, where you can actually specify the preprocessor exactly like this section here. So this section here, you can just cut and paste it directly into here, right? So that's exactly how you sort of should mentally think about preprocessors. In fact, let me show you internally within the source code. The source code, like you should look into the loaders and the bundler plugins that you use because it's only 340 lines. It's not that much. And honestly, like, you know, when we did the compile and preprocess step, let's look at the compile preprocess. It says like, okay, if the user of the plugin has given me a preprocess, right, then I can apply that preprocess here by giving it that source code, right? This is exactly what we just did, except that it's made nicer into like a reusable rollup plugin, right? So that's exactly what we did, and now like there should be no mystery about how this is done. In fact, you can read the whole source code this way, right? Like it's not that complicated, and you can build it up yourself in just raw Node.js like this from first principles. So I want to encourage you to do that. And finally, what this really leads up to is that there's a lot of duplicated work, right? Like, what if we could just publish this as an npm library, and everyone could just use the same preprocessors, right? And that's exactly what Svelte preprocess is. This is a community library maintained. I actually don't know who maintains this, Kaiserman. But it's now part of the official Svelte repo. And basically, this lets you use TypeScript, PostCSS, Pug, CoffeeScript, whatever you want, you know, and you can write your own, but you don't have to. You can just install it with Where the hell is the installation step? Here. So you can import preprocess from Svelte preprocess, and then just pass it in directly to that preprocess option inside of the rollup plugin, which then passes it in to that source code that I just showed you, right? Preproc. It passes it and just runs it here, right? This is exactly where it runs. And this is, you know, if you sort of break that abstraction layer all the way down, this is exactly what you're doing. And it's just done for you by someone else, you know, but you can write your own to do whatever you want, because Svelte is a very extensible system based on this preprocessor system. You can even offer an array of preprocessors, and it just works exactly the way that you want it to, right? So let's just say I have one preprocessor here. And then I can add in another preprocessor down here, and it does a different thing, and it does another different thing, and a different thing. So like, you know, if you want to separate responsibilities that way, that's also possible. So these are basically the foundation for Svelte plugins. Then you can extend the language however you want. I think that's very powerful. That's how we're getting TypeScript and post CSS and you know, all these extra features into Svelte. And so hopefully you know, you learn something by going through this. You know, I chose the live code basically because I had no time to prepare anything, but I think when I live code for you, you really understand that there's nothing more to this process than that. It's really that simple, and you can understand it. Yeah. So thanks for having me.
Probably there are some questions in the Discord chat, but there's just a more discussion kind of thing.
Cool. Yeah, I can take questions offline. Come onto the Discord and ask me questions, or ask, any of the maintainers questions. I just think that people really think compilers are magic, and you really need to know that they're not so magic. They're very simple. You can model them by hand. Once you understand all these moving parts, and they're nothing more than a few hundred lines of config, then you can use it, or you can just not use it. You can write your own. Doesn't matter.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for the in-depth coding session. And I think it also would be helpful if you share the prepared version or the current version somewhere. And
actually,
then,
I forgot. Sorry. Yes, you reminded me. So the whole reason I'm doing this is because I'm collecting all these as recipes for Svelte, right? So we're building up Svelte Society as like this community repo, like anything that doesn't fit on the official docs. Svelte Society does all the other stuff around the core docs. And here's everything that we're building around, like build recipes, around language fundamentals, component recipes, stores, actions, whatever, right? So we want to basically help people be successful by filling in all the gaps that you don't see in the docs. The docs have to be short, concise, and precise, right? Whereas here we can actually weave a narrative story around how we actually explain things and walk people through all the steps so that they really have an understanding. So if you want to learn more, you can actually, I'm just going to paste this into the Discord. If you want to learn more, you can just go directly into here. And this actually walks you through what I just verbally showed you. And of course, we need contributions. This is not a one-person thing. Everyone, if we want Svelte to win, we have to do this. We have to do the dirty work of building the community, building the knowledge, and then sharing that. Yep.
Great inspirational wrap up. Thanks, Sean, again. Cool. Thanks for being with us for more than about hour and 10 minutes. We still have more than 50 people watching. That's great. So now we're coming to the last part of today's meetup. We're gonna choose the winner who gets the free entrance to the GS Nation live event, which will be held in a week. And it's a couple dozen speakers, several workshops, including the one I'm performing on building PWA app with Svelte. Check this out. I think it's really great event. Also, it's usually offline conference held in Amsterdam, but this time we have all the conferences online, and I think guys did a great job to switch it to online format. So please check this out. But now let's get to the winning a ticket. So how am I going to do that? The list of attendees I copied from a meetup page. The last update was at 6 p.m. Amsterdam time. It was about 80 people. Then I just Googled for a randomizer. Don't judge me too hard on that. I picked the second link in the results, not the first. First had a crappy design and asked me to disable my ad blocker. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna just share the lists, and then we're gonna figure out who gets the code. So here's the list of attendees. I wanted to copy the usernames, but actually some of the usernames were parsed really not correctly, so I just copied the URLs. Going back to our randomizer, paste it in. It's about 83 lines, and press the magic button. I hope everybody who is watching did register on the event, because that was the only way for us to track the participants. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Beautiful animation, of course. And we got some URL. I'm now gonna open it here. So it's Mr. Amar.
Yay!
Mukhal. Yeah, congratulations, man.
Pretty easy.
I will I will message you on a meetup website to send you the promo code. I hope you like the event, and yeah, that was it. Please check Svelte Society GitHub page for recipes, the one Sean was referencing to, and also updates on the content of today's meetup. We will upload it within a day or two. And if you fancy to give a talk on the next event, please ping me on Twitter. Guys, it was a pleasure to run the event with you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for insightful presentations. And let's catch up on Twitter for next interesting Svelte content.
Totally. Thank you for organizing. You've done a really great job, and we should do this again.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay. Speak to you soon, guys. Enjoy
Bye,
the
everyone.
evening. Yeah, enjoy your day, Sean, because for you it's only the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Long day. All right.
Good
See ya.
luck. Bye. Thanks, everyone.